So when I say international law, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For a lot of us, it's probably a bit of skepticism, right? I mean, you see the headlines about wars, human rights abuses, environmental disasters, and you just have to wonder if this global rulebook has any real teeth. Well, today we're going to dive into that. We're going to figure out what international law actually is and whether it's an essential framework for our world or just, a nice idea.
And that really is the heart of it, isn't it? It's the big question that looms over everything. If there's no world police force to arrest a country, or a global court that everyone has to listen to, can we honestly call it law? It's a totally fair question, and we're going to tackle it head-on.
And you really don't have to look far to see where the doubt comes from. Just think about the headlines we've all seen over the last couple of decades. It often feels like international rules are just suggestions, especially when it comes to the most powerful countries. It's easy to get the impression that when push comes to shove, international law is basically optional.
Okay, so to really get a handle on this skepticism, let's not just brush it aside. Let's actually break down the case against international law. It really boils down to three key criticisms. So here are the core doubts. First, the question of just existence. Are there even any concrete, solid rules, or is it all just a bunch of vague, lofty principles? Second, there's its legal nature. If you can't enforce it the way you enforce, say, a speeding ticket, is it really law in the same way? And then, of course, the big one, effectiveness. Does it actually change how powerful states behave? Or do they just pay it lip service and then do whatever they want anyway?
And this quote right here, it really sums up where that line of thinking ends up. The argument basically goes, maybe we're all just using the wrong word. Maybe international law isn't a legal system at all, but more of a moral code or a framework for politics and diplomacy. But is that the whole story?
Look, the critics have some very valid points, and it is absolutely crucial to acknowledge the failures. But what if the problem is that we've been using the wrong measuring stick to judge international law all along?
And yeah, there's absolutely no shying away from these. The international community's failure to stop the genocide in Bosnia, or its inability to halt the horrific atrocities in Syria, these are profound, devastating failures. They are stark, painful reminders that this system is far from perfect and has, at times, tragically failed to protect the people who needed it most.
But here's the thing. That's not the whole picture. Focusing only on the failures is a bit like judging a hospital only by the patients it couldn't save while ignoring all the ones it did.
Because there have been some massive successes, too. The United UN action that reversed Iraq's illegal invasion of Kuwait back in 1990, that was a landmark moment. So was the internationally supervised path to independence for East Timor. And you've got the ongoing work of the International Criminal Court, the ICC, which is a huge deal because it's showing a commitment to holding individuals, not just states, accountable for their actions.
So what is going on here? How can this one system fail so badly, but also succeed so spectacularly? Well, the answer lies in what is a really fundamental misunderstanding. See, we instinctively compare international law to the national law we all live under, but they're two completely different beasts. National law operates within a country. It has a government that makes laws, courts that interpret them, and police that enforce them. It's top-down. But international law, it operates between states that are all, in theory, legally equal. There's no world government, so it has to work through consent and cooperation.
So, once we stop trying to jam it into that domestic law box, we can start to see how international law actually works as a legal system built for equals. And this gets us to a much better definition. International law isn't about one power dominating another. It's a system built for cooperation. Its main job is to provide a stable, predictable framework so that sovereign countries can interact, trade, and sort out their disagreements, all based on their mutual consent.
And what's so fascinating is how much that original idea has grown. For a long time, it really was just about states. But not anymore. Now, huge international organizations like the UN and the World Health Organization are major players. And this is so important, individuals are now subjects of international law, both through human rights protections and through criminal courts. Even multinational corporations are increasingly part of the conversation.
And the sheer scope of it all is just vast. It's so easy to just focus on war and peace, but international law governs almost every part of our interconnected world. Seriously, every time you mail a letter to another country, or get on a plane, or even make an international phone call, you are benefiting from a system of rules created by international law. It regulates everything from the deepest parts of the ocean to the final frontier of outer space. This brings us to a really huge development, because the entire purpose of international law has gone through a massive shift, especially in the last 75 years or so.
So, modern international law really has two main jobs. The first is its traditional role, to facilitate cooperation. Think of it as the oil in the engine of globalization. It sets the common rules for things like trade and shipping and communications. But the second function, this one is revolutionary. It's the mission to actively control what states do. That means outlawing aggressive war and, crucially, reaching inside a state's own borders to protect the human rights of its people. That shift from a system just for cooperation to one that also limits raw state power, well, that changes everything.
So after all that, where do we land? What's the final verdict here? Well, international law is certainly not perfect, but it is absolutely essential. When we judge it on its own terms, not as some flawed, broken version of the law we have at home, we see a functional, working legal system. Yes, it has high-profile failures, but it also works quietly, every single day to maintain global order, to regulate how we all interact, and more to offer a shield to the most vulnerable among us. That is way more than just a moral guideline, it's a real legal system doing real work.
And so I'll just leave you with this final thought. For all of its flaws, for all its imperfections, in a world as deeply connected, complex, and sometimes dangerous as ours, could we actually function without it? Just try to imagine a world with no shared rules for the oceans, for the air, for global trade, or for basic human dignity. What would that world even look like? That's really something to think about.